More twists and turns yesterday in the Saints head coaching search, leaving Kellen Moore, no pun intended, the likely front runner in the whole thing. Now it's a sit and wait and see what happens. I'll give you my hot take on the whole process. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So the head coaching review so far, um, backtracking the last couple of weeks, and kind of focusing on the in-person interviews because that's when things kind of get serious. We had four candidates that were scheduled with multiple interviews: Aaron Glenn, Darren Rizzi, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore. We had in-person interviews only for the Saints from Anthony Weaver, Mike Kafka. Kliff Kingsbury was on the list, never interviewed, withdrew his name. And honestly, I'm not sure if he was ever a serious considered candidate by the Saints or if he was truly looking for a job or if this was just one of those throw my name out there, kind of see what happens. No real interest from anybody, possibly including the Saints. Pull it back as subtle as he could so nobody noticed, but I think everybody noticed. And then you had the rumored Mike McCarthy, which never materialized. And last night we found out Kingsbury officially withdrew, like I think everybody knew he was gonna. And McCarthy basically said, "No, I'm not taking any interviews. I'm focusing on the coaching search next year." So when you look at it, Glenn was basically Jets Saints. Obviously, he took the Jets job. Brady was Jags Saints. As soon as the whole thing went down with the Jags and Liam Cohn on that Friday afternoon, very next day he pulls his name because the only other consideration he had was the Saints. Not really a good look, but okay. So that's two. Now you look at it more. Cowboys, Jags, and Saints were his three scheduled. Well, he only took the one. We flew to Philly Monday. It seems he is the front runner, but we didn't exactly leave there with an announcement of, yeah, he's going to be our head coach. Now that gets tricky because he's still coaching and he's got this Super Bowl thing coming up in about 10 days or so. So there's that. And I think the feeling now is that he is indeed the front runner. Rizzi was the only other one with two options. It was basically the Jets and the Saints. And I don't think Rizzi, in my opinion, was under any serious consideration for the Jets job. And again, what I'm about to say is my own opinion, but I don't think Weaver and Kafka were ever in any serious consideration for this job. And I'm not so sure that they are. I feel like at this point, clearly state my opinion based on just as we're seeing stuff swirling around out there. We're serious about Moore, and maybe he was the target all along. My feeling was it was Glenn, and then it was going to be Moore Brady. I think that's the three spots we were at. I, I think Weaver and Kafka would just fallbacks if everything goes wrong. Well, then yeah, we'd probably take our choice from one of those two. And I think Rizzi's the failsafe. As long as Rizzi was in the mix of possibly head coaching here, he wasn't going to get, and I think everybody agrees that if he doesn't get the head coach here, he's going to wind up in Denver with Sean. So holding that off right now, I mean, the hot take that I'm getting from all this is either Moore says yes and Rizzi goes to Denver, or Moore says no and Rizzi's, I think, the possible replacement. They could still go that route with one of the other two, but I'm not so sure. If Moore wasn't under still heavy consideration and possibly to take the job, I don't think they would be lingering around anymore because we're seeing it. We're seeing it more and more since this roller coaster thing started basically on Friday. And here we are Wednesday morning going, the no's are stacking up, the question marks are stacking up. More and more Saints fans, even some diehards, are going, "What is going on here? This shouldn't be this hard." And it really seems like it's being harder than it needs to be. It went from something that was optimistic in the Saints fan base, in the media, in the whole realm of the bad taste we had in our mouth from 2024 season of going, well, here's some hope and here's some possibility. And it just feels like it's been squashed. And sooner or later, we got to start looking around. And I think it's a lot sooner. It's already happening. And I think more and more people are getting on board. And even I was trying so hard to stay positive through this whole process, but they make it hard. But management and ownership, it seems like this has turned into a total and complete shit show. And I don't see why it should have been. I get there were 6 other jobs open, but when you look at the interview process, it wasn't like we were hardcore fighting, except for maybe Aaron Glenn, that we were in a hardcore brass knuckle fight trying to get our guy in. And it still seems like we're not nailing down our guy. Makes me wonder, do we really know who our guy is? This is such an important hire on so many levels. Mickey on down, there's a lot of people whose job is going to be affected by this hire. There's no doubt about that. More importantly, the fan base and everything else that you're trying to keep selling hope to is going to get harder and harder. It's getting to the point with me personally, it's getting to be near impossible. And it is not, you want to go into this whole process with the new coach, with the new likely coaching staff, some player turnover coming. Number 9 overall pick, which, as we discussed yesterday on the mock draft, you can't screw that up, but you keep reinforcing that there's screw ups going over and over and over again. It is not a good look. I tried to defend that maybe it wasn't as bad look as people were making it out to be, but yeah, I'm wrong. This is getting worse and worse. It really is turning into a shit show, and I am getting tired of those. If it's Moore, and he's likely the best candidate available, we think, maybe it's Weaver, maybe it's Rizzi by default. I don't really know if Kafka ever had a horse in this race whatsoever, but he's still floating around there. But at this point, you got to, I hate to say salvage the situation, but that's what it feels like. Like something that shouldn't have been this hard and shouldn't have been this messy has gotten very complicated. Along with everything else, we seem to get involved in something that we should be able to pull off. It seems to be a reoccurring theme in the last 6, 7, 8 months or so. And it just all of a sudden goes sideways and turns bad, just like that. So in an effort, I am going to try as much as possible to end on as many positive notes as I can seem to find somewhere, anywhere. Right now, it's a little tough, but I didn't even really want to have the coaching conversation. I thought maybe we'd get a couple days away from it, but is what it is. But I really want to look at something that should be exciting us, which is we have real strong draft capital in this upcoming draft, and trying to look around and seeing, hey, what's available, what's out there, just have the fun with the whole draft prospect pool. And it's front and center right now, or it should be, except for, our other issue going on about looking at some of the guys that are in Mobile. So I was mentioning yesterday when we did the little crazy too early mock draft that actually doesn't mean anything, but pointing out in there one thing, I was talking about Donovan Jackson, that was a guard, had to switch to tackle, probably going to be a guard, and that situation developing in the draft where there's a lot of very good offensive tackles, and there's pro scouts out there saying they're going to be good tackles, but they're also going to be really good guards. I think that is something that can help the Saints a lot, pinning those guys down. And I think that's one of the big storylines. There's a couple that I wanted to touch on and probably will be after day 2 or day 3 in Mobile, somewhere in there. kind of breaking down some, I think, the big storylines there. One of them that I had was, basically, which of these highly ranked offensive linemen are going to stay at tackle and which ones are expected to move to guard and be pretty good there. And this is something that Trevor Sakima picked up. He is the lead analyst at Pro Football Focus. He's in Mobile, but seeing a lot of tweets yesterday on some stuff he was observing while he was there. One of which was actually a couple of videos of here's my high point for the Saints. Somebody like he specifically was talking about Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel is from North Dakota State, so keep in mind not exactly the bowl championship series division, but they're a good football team in their own right as far as challenging for national championships at the next level down. And in college, he played both right and left tackle. Graded out very well over his college career. A lot of positive analysis about him, even as a tackle. He's one of the guys in Mobile that as we said, is in a position fighting. He's fighting for his spot in the draft. Well, Seagama pointed out and then showed some video clips on Twitter that yesterday he practiced exclusively in the interior, at left guard, at right guard, and at center. And so he was turning heads immediately. The few video clips that he showed, he on some one-on-ones dealing with, and you stop and think about it, he never lined up against any of these interior defensive linemen in his college career, and he was doing it at a smaller school at North Dakota State, roll up against some of these big-name interior guys, and they are some very good ones there, and showed video. He's stonewalling guys. There's more of those in there, but he's the one specifically mentioned to kind of go around the point that we were talking about during the mock draft when I got to that point. And I think those, stressing where we are on those day 2 picks, that there's going to be some guys in there like that can help the Saints, because I don't really know if we're going to focus on the offensive line since we have so many holes elsewhere. Could happen. We could take one of those top name left tackles and reshuffle our line as it is. But if we don't, there's going to be some help in there. And as a quick point, one of the guys there, and he was interviewed by Kirk Triplett, is Jari Evans for the Saints. He's been on the Saints coaching staff. I think was his first year this year, or it might be his second. I'm not really sure, but he's a relatively new guy in the totem pole. But he's put this correctly in the correct sense. He's a guy that's gotten a pretty decent reputation working with the Saints offensive line. A little bit we've heard since he showed up there, especially this year with Benton as the offensive line coach. So he's basically an assistant to Benton. And he's also talking about how he's in a state of flux right now with the whole coaching situation because the new guy's coming in, and will he still be around? Because that was also talked about when Triplett was interviewing him. But he is, as nervous as he is about that, he's talking about how excited he was to be in there and really wowed by what he was seeing with some of these interior offensive linemen. I think it's a very good thing from the Saints where we had problems last year. So as a storyline developing in Mobile, and I'm interested to see today if any more names kind of come out of that interior, especially somebody like Zabel, who was an outside guy at a smaller school and showed up on day one and a highly touted scouting analyst like Trevor Seekema was going, kid can play. And specifically in a PFF article mentioned him and said, this guy really put his name out there and continues this during the week. He's going to be making that push to move up the draft board. Versatility, but also the fact that he looked as good as he did. Granted, it was one day in practice, but still, it's a head-turn experience. Later in the week, we're probably going to roll through this some more, talk about some of the other storylines I'm focusing on, and throw some other names out there. But again, positive note, I'm leaving you with one. So if you check out any of the Senior Bowl coverage or watch any of it on Saturday when they actually play the game, there's a name. Keep an eye on. Don't know where he's going to fall in this whole process, but a guy like him or somebody near him in the middle rounds, that's something as Saints fans we look at and go, we got one of those that helps stabilize our depth at the very least on our offensive line, and we need to do that. Really wanted to focus more on what's going on with the Senior Bowl and more with the potential prospects that are going to be coming into a pretty good draft situation as far as capital that the Saints have, especially over the first 2 days with number 9 overall and all those picks on day 2 and a couple of early ones on day 3. So there's some value there. There's some interesting stuff to talk about. I'm going to try to focus on that for the rest of the week, but the coaching thing is what the coaching thing is. And at any point in time, we may be popping in and talking about that. We're going to live stream Monday night. Don't forget, 8 p.m. Central. And I'm sure all this will be a central theme that's going to get thrown around by that point. Hopefully, we have a freaking head coach by that point also that we can talk about. So, till I see you Monday night, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.